The Legend of Zelda series is one of the most important video game franchises in terms of evolution. From the format introduced with the original Legend of Zelda, to the groundbreaking 3D mechanics of Ocarina of Time, to the motion controls of Skyward Sword. It's fair to say that the Zelda series speaks and breathes innovation and evolution, and one of the most recent and arguably best decisions ever made for the series was to take the game's open world with the release of Breath of the Wild. But this might have had a huge knock-on effect. You see, whilst Breath of the Wild took the series back to its roots from the original Legend of Zelda, it might have also coincidentally ended what we know as traditional Zelda games. And that's exactly what I want to look into. Was Breath of the Wild a sign of the end of traditional Zelda games? But before we answer that question, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. You've probably already heard of the game, but if not, here's what it's about. Enter the world of Talaria, a land run by dark elves, orcs, the undead, and so much more. Raid is a dark fantasy game available on both mobile devices and PC, where you play as one of many badass champions to collect, train, and upgrade your very own team. The game has 16 different factions, ranging from dwarves and barbarians to lizardmen and demon spawn. The game has a very wide variety to choose from. You've got rare, epic, and even legendary ranked champions to fight with, all with their own unique main skills. I am in love with the High Elves personally due to the unique backstory of them in the game, but I'll leave that for you guys to find out. These guys and gals are pretty awesome looking if you ask me. There is also the all new tag team mode where you can partake in 4 versus 4 battles, along with earning some special rewards for taking part in this new mode. Folks, I wasn't 100% familiar with what Raid was about previously, but now that I have tried the game out, I can confirm it is pretty decent. And if you're quick to follow the link in the description to check out Raid, you will be rewarded with a free pack containing 100,000 silver, 2 clan boss keys, 10 mystery shards, and a free awesome champion, Adjudicator. I mean, just look at this awesome champion that you'd get for free. And on top of all of that, you will find even more extra rewards in your inbox for the next 30 days only. So what are you waiting for? Don't just sit there not knowing what Raid is all about. Check it out and delve into the dark fantasy world of Talaria today. Be sure to go grab yourself a snack or a drink and show me them scrumptious snacks on my social media, and let's now answer the big question: have we seen the last of traditional Zelda games? Firstly, let's establish what a quote-unquote traditional Zelda game actually is. Whilst myself and some of you might already know what I mean by that term, a lot of current fans came into the series through the release of Breath of the Wild. So to make it clear, let's define a traditional Zelda game. The term traditional Zelda games refers to installments such as Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, A Link to the Past, and so on. More or less every title before Breath of the Wild, with the exception of the original Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2, as they are quite different format-wise to the rest. Which leads us to what makes one a traditional game: the format. Traditional Zelda games follow the format of a linear adventure, often going along the lines of 3 dungeons, typically a forest, fire, and water, then followed by some sort of story plot such as Ocarina of Time's time travel discovery, or Twilight Princess's villain being revealed and wolf abilities being learned, then followed by 5 more dungeons, and then the final boss. That is the best way to describe a traditional Zelda game in my opinion. Obviously, this is subjective to an individual's experience, but the facts and formula are there. That is generally what's considered a traditional Zelda game, with the main thing being that they are linear. The linearity does vary with game to game, but overall they follow a linear story, an adventure along a one-way path, the exact opposite of Breath of the Wild, which for visual thinking would be an open field, where you can go anywhere whenever you like. Now that we have that clear, to tackle the question of if we have seen the last of these games, we need to look at 2 key things: the positives of switching permanently to an open world format, and what would be left behind with said potential move. Beginning with the positives of a potential permanent move to open world Zelda, I think we all know the obvious ones, such as it would be a much more approachable format for outsiders to get into the Zelda series. Due to how open and free an open world game is, it's a lot less stressful and consuming to just hop in and play whenever. I can admit that I felt this a little whilst playing Breath of the Wild myself. Although Twilight Princess is my absolute favourite, I found myself much more inclined to just hop on Breath of the Wild than I typically ever would with Twilight Princess. This is fully down to the fact that if I was stuck in Twilight Princess, my option would be to get past the area I'm stuck on, whereas in Breath of the Wild, if I was stuck with, say, one of the Divine Beast dungeons, I could simply just turn around and do something else. The experience is much more approachable and appealing to an outsider of the series. It's a lot less intimidating. Along with that, it offers more opportunities to have a larger story. In past games, due to the linearity, they typically had to follow one set storyline, with at most a few spin-off stories or quests, but with an open world game, the opportunities to have multiple different stories are endless. This is just an idea, so don't take it as fact, but for example, you could have a Sheikah storyline focused on their battles or even wars with the Yiga clan as a story, whilst also having the main story revolving around Princess Zelda and the restoration of Hyrule. And along with those two storylines, you could also have one around Ganon or whatever evil is plaguing the land currently. These individual storylines can also openly overlap each other as they like. The term open world really does have a huge emphasis on being open. On top of those two factors, it's also just a breath of fresh air, pun intended. It gives the game developers a chance to explore something new, which can be very necessary to keep a series on top, which the Zelda series has done for over 30 years now, and with the success of Breath of the Wild, would it really make any sense to go back to the linear format of past games? Before answering that, let's look at what would be left behind, and why that could be either a good or bad thing. Obviously, we would be forever losing that classic 3 dungeons, plot revealed, 5 dungeons, then boss format, which for me personally is part of the charm to Zelda games. Sure, I loved Breath of the Wild, but it lacked that charm in my opinion, and I do believe it could somewhat be regained in an open world game, but just not to the same degree. This could just be a personal thing, but that format is Zelda games. It gives them memorability, the puzzles and enemies of the dungeons, the shock you feel when part of the story unfolds, and the anticipation as you get closer and closer to finally taking out the big bad. That feeling will be lost. As in an open world game, or at least Breath of the Wild's case, you can just go straight to the final boss, and whilst I don't think Breath of the Wild 2 will have that straight to the final boss factor, it will definitely be open world. Those feelings will be lost, but that's not all. Something else we could be losing is the mechanic of classic Zelda items. Whilst not something the series absolutely needs to continue, as seen in Breath of the Wild with the Sheikah Slate, it's a similar case to the story format we'd be losing. Collecting all the items within the dungeons made the adventure feel worth it, outside of the story itself obviously. They added a little something, an incentive to push on. Maybe that's why the Divine Beasts weren't as in depth and didn't click with many people. I suppose you could argue that the champion abilities are the items / incentives, but they aren't even necessary to collect for the story. This isn't as big a deal as they could do some sort of hybrid thing in future games with, say, unlocking key items, but that's a whole other discussion. For me personally, those are the two things we would be losing. Knowing now both the positives and negatives of a move to a potential permanent open world game future, or at least for the foreseeable future, we can weigh them up next to each other and try to come to some sort of answer. So on the positive side, the series would be a lot more approachable, likely resulting in bringing in a lot more new players, along with being a lot more open for story ideas. On the negative / losing side, we would be losing the charm of the already established Zelda formula, along with the excitement and achievement of classic Zelda items. Honestly, I don't think the series as a whole would take that big a hit if they dropped classic Zelda items, and whilst I'm sure the developers don't want to just toss the proven formula away, it lacks creativity now. Using the same formula over and over again only works for so long. Thankfully, the Zelda team are incredibly creative, but eventually, coming up with new ideas to just put into the same formula would become an incredibly difficult task. I believe this is just a natural evolution for the series. A story-based series won't last unless each story is different enough. Using a formula only works for so long in my opinion. I think the Zelda series may have reached the point where that formula is beginning to feel stale. I think what we are about to see, or well, already are seeing, is a new era of Zelda. As for the question itself, have we seen the last of traditional Zelda games? I would say, yeah. at least for the foreseeable future. I think the best direction for the series to take would be open world adventures. I would love to see a traditional game in the future, but as of right now, I think the series is entering that previously mentioned new era, the era of open world Zelda games. Thank you so much for checking out the video. If you enjoyed, then be sure to drop a like and subscribe for more Zelda content. Where do you think the future of the Zelda series is headed? Leave a comment below and let's get a discussion going. Huge thanks to all of my amazing and wonderful Patreon supporters. Your generous support really helps me to make these videos as often as possible to the highest quality possible. I really do appreciate the support. If you'd like to help support the channel and get your name featured at the end of all of my videos and more, then check out the card in the top right or link in the description. Again, thanks for watching, and until the next time, I've been Hyrule Gamer.